There is a moment. You probably remember it. It may have been a look across a room, or a sentence that landed differently than you expected, or the sudden awareness of someone's presence that you couldn't explain. And in that moment, something shifted. Not emotionally, not metaphorically, physically. Inside your skull, a cascade of chemical and electrical events began that would, over the coming hours and days and weeks, fundamentally reorganize the way your brain processed everything. You didn't choose it. You didn't decide. It simply happened, the way a match lights when you strike it. And the science of what happened next is stranger, older, and more powerful than any love song has ever managed to capture. To understand what falling in love actually does to a brain, you have to start with dopamine. Not because dopamine is the whole story, but because it is the beginning of it. Dopamine is your brain's anticipation molecule. It doesn't make you feel pleasure exactly. It makes you crave what you expect will bring pleasure. It fires not when you get the reward, but when you expect it. And a new person who captivates you is, from your brain's perspective, the ultimate unpredictable reward machine. Neuroscientist Helen Fisher at Rutgers University spent years scanning the brains of people who had recently fallen in love, using functional MRI to watch what happens in real time when someone is shown a photo of the person they love. What she found was striking. The ventral tegmental area, a small cluster of cells deep in the primitive part of the brain, lit up with extraordinary intensity. This is the same region that activates in response to cocaine. The same region that fires when you are desperately hungry and someone puts food in front of you. The same region involved in every powerful craving the human brain is capable of producing. Falling in love is not an emotion in the way we usually think of emotions. It is a motivational state, a drive. The brain treats the person you love the way it treats water when you are dehydrated, not as a pleasure, but as a necessity. And because dopamine is involved, the brain does something predictable and fascinating. It pays attention, obsessively. The new person becomes the default object of your mental focus. When you are not with them, you think about them. When you are with them, you are hyper-aware of everything they do. Neuroscientist Lucy Brown at Albert Einstein College of Medicine, who collaborated with Fisher on several studies, found that the brain regions associated with focused attention and motivation showed elevated activation in newly in-love people that was comparable to the pattern seen in people with obsessive-compulsive disorder. Love, in its early stages, is neurologically indistinguishable from obsession. But dopamine is only one player. Within hours to days of falling in love, the brain also begins flooding with norepinephrine, the same chemical that surges in your body during acute stress. Your heart races. Your palms sweat. Your attention narrows. You lose your appetite. You can't sleep properly. These are not the romantic symptoms poets describe as sweetness. They are the physiological signatures of an alarm response, repurposed by evolution for a different kind of urgency. And then there is serotonin, or rather, the sudden and dramatic absence of it. Psychiatrist Donatella Marazziti at the University of Pisa measured serotonin levels in 3 groups of people: people who had recently fallen in love, people diagnosed with obsessive-compulsive disorder, and healthy controls. What she found was unexpected enough to reshape how researchers think about love. The people who had recently fallen in love had serotonin levels nearly identical to those of the OCD patients, and significantly lower than the healthy controls. Serotonin is, among other things, the chemical that helps the brain feel settled, satisfied, able to let go of a thought. When serotonin is low, the mind returns to the same thought again and again, unable to release it. This is the mechanism behind the intrusive rumination of OCD, and it appears to be the mechanism behind the intrusive rumination of new love. The reason you cannot stop thinking about someone is partly because the chemistry of your brain in those early weeks is physically preventing you from doing so. You're not being weak or irrational. You're experiencing a documented neurochemical state. Now add oxytocin. Oxytocin is sometimes called the bonding hormone, and the name is accurate but incomplete. It surges during physical touch, during eye contact, held longer than usual, during the simple act of being near someone you are attached to. Its primary function is not pleasure. It is trust. Oxytocin literally lowers the activation of the brain's threat detection systems. It makes you less likely to perceive the other person as dangerous, less likely to see threat in their ambiguous expressions or neutral words. It opens you. And because it opens you, you become more vulnerable than you normally are. The person you love has access to parts of your nervous system that no one else does. They can regulate your heartbeat with their presence and dysregulate it with their absence. They become, in a neurological sense, part of your internal environment. This is what attachment researchers call co-regulation. Your nervous system and another person's nervous system begin to synchronize. Studies have found that long-term couples in loving relationships show synchrony in their heart rate variability, their cortisol rhythms, even their sleep architecture. Two separate nervous systems begin to function, in some measurable ways, as one. And the brain doesn't stop there. Research published in 2010 by psychologist Art Aron at Stony Brook University found that romantic love activates the same brain regions associated with profound personal goal achievement. The same regions that light up when you finally accomplish something you have worked toward for years. Love doesn't just feel important. Your brain processes it as important, in the same category as the things that define your identity and direction. This is why losing love feels catastrophic in a way that goes beyond sadness. When someone you love leaves, it isn't just an emotional loss. It is a neurological disruption. The dopamine anticipation loop that was pointed at this person now fires into empty space. The serotonin that was already low drops further. The oxytocin that was regulating your nervous system through their presence is suddenly absent. The brain regions associated with physical pain, the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex and the anterior insula, activate during social rejection in ways that are physically identical to their activation during bodily pain. Heartbreak is not a metaphor. It is a pain response. But here is what is perhaps most remarkable about all of this. The brain changes that falling in love produces are not temporary. Studies using long-term neuroimaging of couples have found that the early dopamine surge does fade. The obsessive quality softens. The serotonin returns toward baseline. But in couples who maintain deep attachment over years and decades, the brain regions associated with calm, with reward, and with the specific kind of satisfaction that comes from feeling deeply known by another person, show sustained and elevated activation compared to people who are not in loving relationships. The early fireworks are replaced by something quieter, but in some ways more profound. A persistent low-level activation of the reward circuitry that accompanies simply knowing the person is there. Neuroscientist Bianca Azevedo, working with Fisher and Brown, studied couples who had been together for an average of 21 years and who reported being still deeply in love. Scanning their brains while they looked at photos of their partners, Azevedo found activity in the ventral tegmental area, the same dopamine-rich region that lights up in new love, that was nearly as strong as what she had seen in people who had been together for only weeks. Long-term love, for some people, is not the diminished version of early love. It is early love, stabilized. That moment you remember, the look, the sentence, the sudden awareness, was the beginning of one of the most complex neurological events the human brain is capable of producing. It recruited ancient reward systems and social bonding circuits and threat detection pathways and goal pursuit networks, all simultaneously, all pointed at one person. It didn't feel like a brain event. It felt like recognition, like something that was always going to happen, finally happening. That feeling, it turns out, was your nervous system doing something it evolved to do, over millions of years, for one purpose: to make sure you didn't let go.